Hello everybody and welcome to a work in progress video here at CL Aldridge Art. This is a drawing that I am currently working on. I will also hopefully be working on a coloring project, but I wanted to make a video, and this is basically what I'm working on, and I didn't want to stop because my drawing mojo is it appears sort of sporadically, and so I wanted to take advantage of it while it was standing here in the open where I could see it. Does that make sense? So I drew this, and then I changed my mind as to where I wanted this flower placement. So I'm going over lines that I've already laid down as far as inked, but don't worry because I'll be able to fix that. This is a mandala. It is for either my new book or, well, it'll be for individual sale before it shows up in a book. But so that's the way I usually do it. If I do a new drawing, I put it in my Etsy shop, and it's available for digital purchase. And then when I have enough of them, or if I'm drawing on a particular theme, then I'll put it together, and there'll be a brand new coloring book as well, so that is in print. But for right now, this one is just work in progress, and it is one of two that will hopefully be showing up in my Etsy shop this weekend. This being the second one. So anyway, and then of course I will be also working on a coloring project. So how is everybody doing? I just want to check my white balance here and see if I can warm up this picture just a little bit. It is kind of looking a little bit cool. There we go. That's a little bit warmer of a color, I think. Don't want to make it look like I'm dead. Anyway, so what is everybody doing? How are you occupying your time during the shutdown? Are you back at work? Are you thinking of going back to work? Do you have a job to go to? Do tell. Let me know. And hopefully you're coloring. And let me just make sure that my focus is good. I'm going to zoom down just a little bit. There we go. See if I can hit that focus sweet spot. Oh, that will do. So I was listening today. I am a news junkie, and of course, with so much of the news being difficult to hear these days, that's been a little bit hard. When I do, yes, sweet kitty, I love you too. When I do listen to it these days, it is I prefer to listen to direct to things. So I rather than listen to a news broadcast that is just the sound bites of what was left over, or that have been selected, I like to listen to like the whole of something. So today, hey, that's enough. That's okay, because I can fix little mistakes like that. It's amazing what you can do with a white gel pen. So today I was listening to the Senate hearings on on how they're planning to face trying to do testing in A, the event of another pandemic, and B, of course, the overall sort of knowledge base of this current pandemic, and making sure that if there are known outbreaks, how to deal with those, that type of thing. So it was actually really interesting, I have to say, because I've asked the same questions that I imagine a lot of you have. If they've got these nifty tests available, then what the heck is the problem? What's the real problem? And so as I sort of dug into it, and based upon different things that these guys were going to say or said, it was really interesting. Like, I looked up, well, because there's like this Abbott test, this supposedly, I'm trying to get the focus back. Supposedly there's this 5-minute test, right? Well, so really what that is that there's a machine that Abbott Labs has invented and distributed. Well, now, of course, the first fact is that there are only 18,000 of these machines in the entire nation. They're expensive to manufacture. They did manufacture these 18,000 in a very short period of time, but there are only 18,000 of them. And so I did a little quick math, because you all know that I love my math. And so the current U.S. population is 331 million, 2,651 in the 2020 projection. If there's 18,000 Abbott machines, that's one machine for every 18,389.04 people. So at a 5-minute test, or 5 minutes per test, and there are 12 5-minute segments in an hour, times 24 hours in a day, assuming that this machine could run, which of course it can't, but it could, if it could, 24 hours a day, that would only be 288 tests per day that this machine is capable of, right? Now, what you don't hear, but what the scientists who actually invented this test will tell you, is that problem one, 15% of the tests from this Abbott machine are false negatives. So out of 288 tests per day, 43.2 people per day who have it, because it's a false negative, who may have it, are still able to spread the disease. Problem two, there's a nationwide swab shortage, which I'm going to talk about in a second. And then, of course, there's a nationwide reagents shortage for the swabs, which it doesn't matter, because if you don't have the damn swabs. So who makes swabs, right? We'd think, well, Johnson & Johnson makes swabs. No, they do make swabs, but they don't make the right kind. And so what are the right kind, and why are they the right kind? And why can't you just use Johnson swabs? Makes perfect sense. I mean, it's a Q-tip, right? But just because so manufacture them and put them on longer handles. And the problem really is the sanitization, and the fact that it isn't just a cotton swab. There is one company in the United States that manufactures the bulk of medical grade swabs. And it's actually a patented process because the cotton that is involved is it's a microfiber type thing, and it's specifically invented to be able to actually get a hold of cells and hold on to them and still maintain its sanitary features. So, and then of course, once the company manufactures them, it has to go to a different company to be sanitized and packaged in the individual packages. Because obviously, Q-tips come in boxes of 100, but they're loose inside. So the second you open it, the first one could be considered sanitary, and every single one thereafter is not. Wood, they have to use a special plastic for the stem thing. It's not a wood handle because wood interferes with the accuracy of the test. So bottom line is there's only one company that makes them. And they're working at breakneck speed, and it's just not fast enough to make as many as they need to make. So, and you cannot, the machines, even if they were willing to share their patented data on the machines that help to make the cotton just right. I mean, you're then forcing a company to give up its patent rights, and they actually build their own machines. So, in order to, they built their own machines or had them built to custom specs and that type of thing. So, that, ordering a company to give up its patented product, that trust me, that is not a road we want to go down. That is not a precedent we want to go down, or a precedent we want to set. So it's very, very interesting, when you start to actually dig into the real information and and find out, because what they're doing right now is, and I think that this is kind of important, is they are actively on the hunt. The National Institute of Health and another agency called BARDA, and what BARDA is in charge of is that national stockpile, which I didn't realize had only come into being in the last 20 years. That there's even been a national stockpile of things like medical equipment and stuff like that. So imagine if there hadn't been at least what there was in the stockpile, we'd have really been in a world of hurt, because I know that they distributed millions of PPE, and it still, of course, wasn't enough, but but there wouldn't have even been that if we hadn't had a national stockpile of some sort. So that is, it's fascinating. And of course, none of that, the creation of that had anything at all to do with the current administration. This was all stuff that's been in place for basically the last 20 years. So it's really interesting. Of course, you know me, I'm kind of a nerd. I like to learn, I like to get my facts direct, and I like to learn new things. So, as long as I can study it from the comfort of my own home and am not, having to go out there amongst people to study it, I just find it fascinating. Absolutely bad. The company that makes the swabs, by the way, is called Puritan, and they are in Maine. They are actually a U.S. company, and they are in Maine. So, and they are working. They are working. One of the big problems that they are having is they can't hire employees. Or they could, but there aren't any. There aren't any employees. They're not the highest paying jobs in the world. They're not the lowest, but it's very difficult to find people who are actually willing to work. And I found this when I tried back when I lived in Arizona or in Nevada. It was hard to find employees who are willing to actually show up every day and do the work. And they had, of course, relied on a fair amount of you hesitate to call it foreign help, but undocumented workers. And like I say, it's not the lowest paying job in the world, but and this has been my personal experience as well, that I am much likelier to get a good day's work out of my undocumented friends or employees than I was some, not all, but some of the privileged the world owes me something generation. And once again, that's not all, that's not a generalization. That is an observation of people who are not instilled from a young age with the same kind of work ethic that I was. I mean, I completely understand that if I don't work, I don't get paid. And it's always been that way. So consequently, you kind of got to do the work. Anyway, that's all judgmenty stuff. And anyway, but it is just fascinating when you start digging into the why, the who, the what, the where, the why, the how. Not to place blame, because geez Louise, God only knows there's plenty of blame to go around. And there always is in any kind of a crisis situation. You're always looking for somebody to blame, but I don't think that I don't think you can blame this on anybody. It's just what happened. In other words, blaming somebody is just not. It's not useful. It's just not useful in the least. There's always time for recriminations, but I just think that that they're useless. Recriminations are useless. You learn who you can trust and who you can't, and you act accordingly. Don't trust people that lie to you, and trust the ones who come through. Are you being a camera ham? Are you being a camera ham, my love? Are you? You are. I know. No. She says, Mom, I can hear you talking, but you're not paying any attention to me. And I want you to pay some attention to me. Yeah, no. We're going to stop doing that now. No. 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 Kitty break. kitty break. Okay. Yes, you can have a little pet. You can have a little pet. No, you can't chew on. No. All right. See, now I know how to get rid of her. Look, here's what you do. To get rid of her, you give her her toy. Now this is a roll of washi tape attached to the edge of a piece of what was very expensive gossamer or ribbon. And I say was because she is trying really hard to shred it. There you go. She's trying. She's just shredded it. Anyway, so basically I've been doing that, and I've been watching a lot of. Been watching an absolute lot of YouTube movies. Did you know that there's a lot of free YouTube movies? I have watched more than a few in the last few days. They're I guess they used to be probably what those in my generation would remember as the movie of the week. It used to be that network television would, they'd have like on Monday nights they'd have a movie of the week, or sometimes there are, especially things like Ion TV and all of that. There's a lot of movies that are made in Canada. Television. Oops. Yeah, that's not what I wanted to do. Television movies that are made in Canada. And one of the things that I watched, my favorite book in the world is Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. And I have never, ever, ever wanted to see a movie version of it because I was absolutely certain that they wouldn't get it right. And whoever made these movies, there's 3 of them. It's part 1, part 2, and part 3. And what's weird is that the roles of the major characters are recast in each one of the 3 movies. Not to age them, it's just like an entirely different cast of the same people. And it's labeled part 1, part 2, and part 3. Same characters. It's almost, what it was almost like they had all these actors who needed to keep their SAG cards, Stage and Actors Guild cards. So, this way, by making 3 movies, they not only got a chance to cover all of the material, because it's a really long book, but they also got a chance to employ, so let's say there were 12 actors, so 12 times, they got to employ 36 actors instead of just 12. So, and because I honestly don't think that if you weren't familiar with the story, if you didn't actually know what the story was, I think it would be very difficult for you to watch the movies and actually understand what is going on. Although they do a pretty good job of portraying that. I do have to say they do a pretty good job of that. But in short, it isn't about pitting big business against anybody. It's about value and people's right to your intellect, and that that if you have intellect and you provide a value into the world, that you deserve what you earn from that. And of course, in that particular kind of a situation, socialism would be a very difficult concept. So it sort of takes on really what, and it's always been a timeless book, which is why I like it so much. It takes on, that you kind of need to understand that and it was written at the time of the big industrialist. When big industrialists were 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 thought of as less than human because because they made a lot of money. Well, they also provided a lot of jobs, and they were philanthropic, and they did all very, very much the way that some of our big industrialists are now. I mean, Bill Gates gives away a lot of money. And as far as I'm concerned, the guy invented a product that most of us use every day, and a ton of different products. So, but he also is doing a lot of good with the money that he has. But anyway, the book itself is about a man who is having his intellect. Somebody is trying to steal his intellect, and he basically says that he's going to stop the engine of the world, and then he does by simply making all of the big industrialists that that are the ones that thought up the inventions and things like that, or who, can you imagine Apple being Apple without Steve Jobs? Of course not. We probably wouldn't have iPhones. We wouldn't have personal devices like we do now, because he thought all that stuff up. And then he had other people execute his ideas, but the ideas were his. The blood, sweat, and tears were his. Anyway, it was a very good. They did I guess that's a really long way of saying they did a really good job with it. I was surprised. I was pleased, more than a little pleased, that they had done such a good job with it, to the point where I didn't even notice all this. There's only one character who they changed, and I think they didn't get it right they certainly didn't get it right in parts 1 and 3, but because they had Isai Morales play it, the role of Francisco de Anconia in the second part, and that was good casting. That was good because Francisco is supposed to be an international Argentinian playboy, and the first actor that they had play him was really heavy set, and the last actor was just way too old. A well-known Latin actor whose name I can't remember, but and handsome, but just way too old. Just way too old for the part. But which is why I thought, well, maybe it was, they needed to keep their Canadian SAG cards or whatever, because you can't keep your Actors Guild cards if you don't work. Anyway, but then I moved on from that movie to another good one about a woman who suddenly. She was a soap opera actress and had built her sort of self-worth around that character that she played, and suddenly she was in New York, and a taxi came along and clipped the door off the taxi she was getting out of, and left her in a wheelchair as a paraplegic. So she's got to deal with the fact that she feels useless and worthless in the world. And of course, Alfie Woodard, Alfre Woodard, plays a nurse, a live-in nurse with problems of her own. So that was a good one. These are all feel-good movies, you know. David Strathairn. Oh, I love David Strathairn. He's got these light gray eyes, these hazel eyes, with that salt and pepper hair. He's just gorgeous. Plays a guy who's interested in her, or who she's interested in, I guess, who also is interested in her. But of course, he's married and she's paraplegic, and so it's likely that they'll never have an actual affair. But it wouldn't be for lack of desire. Let's put it that way. Anyway, it's an excellent movie. And then I've been watching a lot of English films that are. The one I watched last night was so good. It was. I love Harvey Keitel anyway, and I love Joshua Jackson. You remember Joshua Jackson? He was the cute best friend of Dawson in Dawson's Creek. I know Dawson's Creek is a little different. Can you, sweetheart, I love you, but get down. You're constantly either in my light or between me and my camera controls. Yeah. Okay, there you go. And I've always thought he was adorable. Whoops. Sweet cat. Oh. Damn. Darn. Sorry. I just can't seem to hit that sweet spot. It's like it moves too far. Anyway, so he plays Joshua Jackson's character plays a book editor, and his job he's been given is to go to Italy and try and sign Harvey Keitel's character to a contract. But Harvey Keitel is playing a brilliant novelist who hasn't written anything in 20 years. And of course, 20 years ago he lost his wife, and so his self-worth was tied up with with what his writing cost him, which was time that he could have spent with his wife while she was still alive. So and so it's kind of a book of redemption about Harvey's character teaches Joshua Jackson's character that he is, because he also wants to be a novelist, that he actually is good enough to write, and Joshua Jackson teaches Harvey Keitel that it's okay to go back to writing. That the world, even if the world doesn't think you're good anymore, if you think you're good, that's enough. So they give each other back their mojo, basically. Another feel-good movie, and of course, Harvey Keitel's daughter is beautiful. Her name is Isabella, and of course, Jackson's character falls in love with her, so that helps too. These are all really good movies. Just good feel-good movies. Okay, I think I've got them all now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, centers. Love it. Do I have the... Because you know I'm notorious for leaving stuff out. Let's see, this one is even so. Which side? We'll just go with this side. Okay. By Jove, that's got it. That is that. That is work in progress is done. Don't worry, that gets taken out digitally and replaced with the typewritten, so it's not quite that in your face. So this just needs to have some erasing done, and then I can scan it. Pretty mandala. And on to the next work in progress, which is, whoops. Wait, honey, I want people to admire this, not just your fur. And so I'll be right back. Well, hi, and welcome back. And for my for my next trick, I thought I would work from my own book, Dragons, Flowers, and Mandala. Oh my, drawn by yours truly. This is my latest book I just released at the end of last year, and we've been working on a few things in here, and then I've got a bunch more of the drawings that I've actually colored, but I did it back before it was actually a book, so I'll see if I can't lay hands on some of those and show them to you for those who haven't seen them. But this is, we started this a couple of Sundays ago, I think, on one of my live streams. So since it qualifies as a work in progress, I thought that I would continue on. I don't know about any of you guys, but I have just kind of gotten to the point where I have so many works in progress that it doesn't feel like I actually do anything. And then I managed to talk myself into the idea that you guys aren't really interested in what I do, so I'm constantly fighting that particular demon. But last night I was, it might have been last night, I think it was last night, I was actually watching Lisa Lacree, or Lacree, depending upon how you want to pronounce her name. She pronounces it Lacree, or sort of in between, Lacree and Lacree. At any rate, she was doing this really cool, it wasn't a water lily, it was a beautiful flower. It kind of looked like a water lily, but it was on a stem. So I thought that I would go back to my Inktense, because that's what she was using. She was using her Inktense. She used the blocks to do a background. She was working on watercolor paper, and she used the blocks to do a background, and the pencils to do the detail work, which she then did not activate with water. And but she also used a new technique, or a technique which I had not seen before, and it was basically she wet the paper before she put on the Inktense, which she had used off the block, and it behaved a little more like watercolor, gave her the ability to do a wonderful fade, a fade type blend, which is something that we all try for. Now, this paper is the Amazon paper. So while it takes the water mediums just fine, I don't know if it would actually allow me to do that. We could try, but I don't think so, because it's really, I'm pretty sure Lisa was working on actual watercolor paper. Let me use my rag as opposed to napkins are in fierce short supply. So I'm trying to use as little paper as possible. Oh, that was so... I had tried for the third time this week to get toilet paper delivered. And of course, you know that it didn't work out. And when I opened the door for my grocery delivery, because when they deliver, they ring the bell, she was still in the driveway, and I stamped my little foot and actually cried because there was no toilet paper or paper towels again. So I've given up trying to get them locally. I've ordered some through the Walmart website, you know, the actual warehouse delivery, and hopefully, fingers crossed, they will actually show up. The problem has been that by the time, I mean, Walmart is getting them in stock, but by the time that either they have a policy where they're not delivering them, you know, for whatever reason, they're not including them in grocery deliveries, and you know, they're reserved only for those people who go into the store, or they truly are out. But you know, it'll show in stock, only usually one kind, and then it's like this bulk package that you have to buy, you know, 18 rolls of toilet paper. You can't just buy a 4-pack. And so it'll show in stock, and then by the time the order is put together overnight and out for delivery the following day, there isn't any. So, needless to say, that has been somewhat disconcerting. These are Inktense, of course, that I'm working with. This is the apple green, and this is the green aquamarine, which I'm doing to under the flower where it comes, and then on the inside bends of the curves, and that just gives it a little depth, and then, you know, of course, like along the edges where shadows would be cast, that type of thing. And then this is a twirly, so I'll go through here. So anyway, back to movies that I was watching. I did mention that there were quite a few. What did I see? I mentioned the Harvey Keitel movie, which I really loved. And Joshua Jackson, which I also love. He was just... See, I never... first off, that show was way too young for me. But I liked... I've always liked the message of... the message of positivity that it had, you know, awkward teenagers trying to figure out their lives. I liked One Tree Hill for the same reason, even though I think I was in my 40s when I was watching that. But But hey, you know what? I like Supernatural, and I liked Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Actually, I liked Spike. Uh, and of course, who doesn't love Angel? Loved Angel. Um, but anyway, I digress. But I do like to watch a fair number of English movies. And I got to liking English movies. Excuse me. They're usually lower budget and bit longer story. You know, they're usually, they have much more story to them than, you know, action films or blockbusters or stuff like that. And they're usually poignant and touching, and they usually have a, you know, some sort of a cool message. This is the spring green. Oops, sorry about that. took a pause to cough, and then I lost my train of thought. I think I was talking about poignant movies. I'm back to the spring green, and then I'll top this off with the apple green. Anyway, excuse me. So one of the I like a movie that I watched last night was cool. It was a little boy who got his parents were getting a divorce. Oops, I think I went the wrong color. I went apple green and I meant to go spring green. That's okay. You know what? The world is simply not going to come to an end, and I could just throw in a little of this kind of green as well in a couple of spots. This kind of green being the green Aquamarine. I'm just sort of mixing up these two shades or three shades. Anyway, growing up in Seattle, his parents are suddenly splitting up, and he's with his dad, who's gone back to his village in Ireland. He's got a business trip in London, or business trip in England. So he's taken his kid to Ireland for reasons that are not really clear, other than his family is there, and just drops him off with his brother, right? And disappears. And poor kid, all he's got is a note from his mom that and an overheard conversation that said that she only stayed as long as she did because of him. And and the note is, "I will always love you no matter what happens." So it's never really explained why the mom leaves. It's not really important, other than the fact that the kid's world feels like it's crashing down around him, that kind of thing. And really what the movie is about is him sort of figuring out that no matter what happens, that he's going to be all right, that no matter what happens, it wasn't about him, and he's going to he's going to figure it out. He's going to be okay. But the opening scene, and I won't tell you about the movie, but I'll tell you that the opening scene is this cart, and it's being pulled by this horse. There's no driver. The cart, but it's hauling a coffin, and a wooden coffin, and it's just clopping up the street, and it hits a pothole in the street, and of course the coffin bounces out. It doesn't open or anything. It's not like weird, gross, but it's like you go, oh my goodness, because here come the mourners running, running up the road after the cart, which has obviously gotten away from somebody, and that's the way that the movie opens. So it opens with kind of like a what the heck, but it's kind of funny. But anyway, there's a mystery that has to be solved, and of course, this little boy, that's how he finds out that he's going to be okay. He listens to his uncle a lot, and he solves the mystery. And then the mystery is who's been doing all these kind things for the villager. A woman who doesn't have any money, and food suddenly, boxes of food keep showing up at her door. She also doesn't like to accept charity. That kind of thing. And another woman who, practically breaks her back cutting her own turf, and then what little turf, because they use turf for the fireplaces, what little turf she has put by suddenly disappears, and it never occurs to anybody to go look around into the actual turf holder thing in the back, where it not only is the missing turf where it is supposed to be, but the thing is full. I mean, absolutely full. Somebody has done the back-breaking work already, and so she's like set for the winter. Or it's Ireland, so I mean, But they talk about rain and the fact that, rain is such a life-giving thing, and yet, all people remember about rain is that it was inconvenient. But nothing grows without water. Anyway, it was a very cool film. I enjoyed it. Okay. Oh, and then I watched a good one with Clive Owen and Juliette Binoche. I love her. The Color Chocolate. Remember The Color Chocolate? Or The Color of... no, wait. Yeah, Chocolat. That was it. And, of course, I love Clive Owen in anything. He's adorable. And he plays an English... Well, you kind of sense a theme. I'm always going for the books about teachers or writers, especially. So anyway, this, by the way, is the cadmium yellow. He plays an English. He's an English professor, and he's an English teacher, an honors English teacher at a swanky prep school. And that they've just hired a new art teacher, played by Juliette Binoche, who is a world-renowned artist, and hang on, I got to get the color. I've got to figure out the colors here. All right, the cadmium orange, is that next? Grab that. It's been a couple of days since it's been a couple of weeks since I did the initial ones of these, and I know that this is the mid vermilion is here on this side, and it can go ahead and be dark all the way over there because it's got the shadows. Okay, so we'll leave that. That's the mid vermilion covered. Going up, it's the burnt orange. Burnt orange is next. So, just a little bit of that, sort of fade it in. Okay. Then we've got the tangerine. Yep. The tangerine is, yes. The tangerine is next. Pull it. Just sort of adding a little bit of it to the burnt, or to the burnt orange. Pulling it over. Once again, very, very softly. And now, the lightest of all those oranges, or the brightest, closest to the yellow family, is the cadmium. So, just very lightly, barely touching the page. So anyway, they immediately start to have a bit of a, he's kind of a pain in the neck, as far as being annoying. But, you know, he has a real love of language and words, and so he plays this game where he starts with A, and it's a 4-syllable word, and you have to think of a 4-syllable word starting with B, and then 4 with C. You know, he'll do C, you got to do D, that kind of thing. And you know, the game is, once you've covered A to Z, then you start over at A with 5-syllable words. And you know, if you stump the person, you win that particular round or whatever. Which, of course, is a kind of, you know, that's the kind of game that I like. I love those games that make you think about words, and I like big words. I've always liked big words. But, you know, that doesn't mean that small words can't be just as effective. They can. But, anyway, so they, I don't even remember how it arises, but they have a, oh, I know what it is. They're each talking to their classes, and he's trying to convince the kids that, you know, the phrase, a picture is worth 1,000 words is not true. That, you know, you couldn't express certain things, certain ideas without words. And he is quite eloquent in his argument. And then, of course, Juliette Binoche is as eloquent in her argument that a picture is worth 1,000 words. And so this banter goes on. And, of course, there is a dark side to all of this. He is a raging alcoholic. And only he doesn't drink at school, so she only knows him at school, so she doesn't really know that. And then but he's been like kicked out of the local country club, and basically his job with the school is on the line. They're going to have a board meeting to discuss whether or not they think he should remain employed. So anyway, ultimately they do end up together, and she has her own, of course, issues. She's suffering from rheumatoid arthritis, and so she can hardly work, and so she's trying to figure out, you know, if she's got any art left in her, or what, you know, ways to do her art when her body is betraying her, because she's at the point in her disease progression where she never knows, like she says, what's going to be taken away from her next. So she has, like, for instance, she has no fine motor control, so she's painting with these braces that hold these great big brushes, and she's got this contraption in her studio that holds these big mops, because she does, art on a large canvas scale. Anyway, it's quite interesting. Yeah, it was quite interesting to see, because these are actual contraptions that exist that help artists who work on that scale. And I just thought it was cool. And anyway, he acts like a complete jerk. She finally gets inspired to paint something worthwhile that she actually thinks is worthwhile. And he is drunk and he destroys it accidentally. He doesn't destroy it on purpose, but he ruins it accidentally because he's drunk. And in the meantime, she's having worse and worse RA flares. And so she's in the hospital now, having to have a knee surgery. To replace her knee. And he's all thinking that, that she's just avoiding him. And so everything, he has to learn that everything isn't about him. But ultimately, she makes him want to be a better man. So he gets sober, and he... I know what it is that he's done. The academia, in addition to, of course, being angry with him because of his behavior out in public, he is supposed to be a published author, and he hasn't published anything for a long time. Sort of another theme of the weekend movies that I chose, or the week's movies that I chose. Lots of writers who don't write, artists who don't paint. But you'll notice that what I did first thing this week is actually start to draw again. Ask me if I know what side my bread is buttered on. Now, there are going to be some other additions to this, but I just wanted to work on this for a little bit. Sometimes you just want to put color on the page. Call it good. I really like the way these flowers turned out too. With the little bits of underlying yellow or orange. I'll show you how I did that. If I can remember. It always takes me a second to get back to it. The burnt orange. I know I need the burnt orange. I also need the... yes, the dark aquamarine, yes. I need the mallard green. No. I need the iris blue, yes. I need the green aquamarine. I do, but I also want the dark aquamarine. So I do want it. Oh, I also need the lagoon. Wow, okay. That's the deep violet. I don't need that. Do I? No. Carmine pink. Iron green, deep rose. Whoops. Hang on, I'm sorry. I apologize. Mallard. Oh, the mallard green I definitely did not need. Okay, what have I got in my hand? What? I'm totally screwed up here. Dark aquamarine and iris blue. Okay. And then I've got the lagoon. I don't want the green aquamarine. Yeah, actually that's right. And the burnt orange. Is that right? Yes. It may not be just right, but it'll work. All right, so I'm going to just bring a little bit of the burnt orange down in just a few of these, and not in exactly the same spot on each of the ones that I choose. So maybe I'll make this one also, but have it come down the center. And this one I'll just choose to come up one side. And let's see here. This one will come down this side again. Okay. And maybe we'll come up a little bit on that one. Okay. So just sort of sporadically in there. Then I'm going to take my green aquamarine and maybe put a little bit of that in there. A few spots. Just sort of changing them all up so that they're not exactly the same. Trying to make each one of them just a little bit different. And notice I'm leaving that next layer alone, because those are actually two different colors. Okay, so there's that. Then I've got the lagoon blue. Ooh. Yeah, I don't need the lagoon yet. I need the dark aquamarine. And that can go in here. Maybe I will put a little bit of orange in that one as well. Okay. So just creating, just creating some fun with it. Let's see here. What else did I... Well, of course, I think I probably said on my Sunday stream that, although I might not have, that I bought the Andrew Lloyd Webber musicals that I can't live without, which are Phantom of the Opera and Love Never Dies, which is the sequel. that people either loved or hated. And I happen to be one of the ones that loved it. As far as I'm concerned, they did a good job. Yes, I do. I also want to bring some of the orange in here as well. And the more I listen to it, the more I realize that it, and Andrew Lloyd Webber has said this, that it is a lot more sophisticated of a score than the one for Phantom of the Opera. It is beautiful music. I can just simply say that. It is just simply beautiful music. Beautiful songs, beautiful lyrics. And of course, I am not so attached to the original story that I'm not willing to open my mind to the idea that they have, brought it to a different venue instead of the Paris Opera House, or that it's 10 years later, or that the events that it portrayed might actually have happened, because New York history, especially at that time, was very much the way that it was portrayed in this particular movie. So I am going to go back. I'm going to get some, and I'm just going to put it right over that. There we go. The idea is to dull down the orange just a little bit. It'll show through, but you don't want it to show through. That's why I used the burnt orange instead of one of the brighter ones. Because when it's dry, it'll show through, but it won't be dominant. It'll show more like a stain. Oh, I just love that. That is a look I really, really like. Okay. Oh, and then I watched one yesterday. You'd think that I would have time. Actually, they're in the background when I'm doing something else. But this one was adorable. Had Aidan Quinn, who is always yummy. Aidan Quinn, Virginia Madsen, and Olympia Dukakis, who I just love anyway. I love her sense of humor. And her timing is just ideal. But it's about a young, an awkward teenager who is just coming into her powers as a witch. And of course, her mother and her grandmother are both witches, but she doesn't know that. So she is having to figure out what's going on, and in the meantime, they're both worried about her, and as it turns out, she's a witch who's destined to fulfill a prophecy, and she wants no part of it when she finds out about it. But really the most charming thing about the movie is that there is the sort of school, she has a crush on, the school jock, and the school nerd has a crush on her. Only I don't think there's anything at all that's nerdy about this kid. He's just simply unusual. In that, he's sort of a hard-working. This is the lagoon, by the way, which is a dark blue. Works with his dad. cutting sick trees in the forest and basically doing forest husbandry. And so the whole, this girl's entire family are artists, and Dad runs an art supply store, and Mom is a painter, and Grandma is a sculptor, and the art. This young girl, of course, is she's stuck between being the nerd that she is herself, the oddball, and learning to paint, and but paint isn't really her thing. Her thing turns out to be carving, but anyway, she at one point in time, she's created this huge. Her boyfriend's father has pulled out this gigantic stump from the ground. Obviously a 200-year, 3 or 400-year-old tree, and so she starts with a hose and she basically washes all the dirt away, leaving nothing but the wood, the gnarled twists and turns and all of that, and she carves it and works on it until it becomes this huge 3-piece installation of art that is just absolutely incredible. And so they bring in, since he's got access to cranes and trucks and things like that, they go out to place it in this field where she believes that it belongs. And so they do, and then she decides that it's all in the wrong place. And so her boyfriend says, well, she says, but she's not quite sure, what it should be. And so her boyfriend says, well, close your eyes and see if you can see it that way, in your mind's eye. Just, he's going to be the one that's got to go get the truck and move everything back around. He kind of would like to only do it once. Well, as she's picturing it in her mind's eye, of course, these huge, 2-ton stumps are like rising up in the air and moving around and gently setting back down to the earth. And he's just like, that is so cool. He's not freaked out by it at all. He just thinks that it is so cool that she's magic, And so I got to thinking, wouldn't it be nice if we were all so accepting of things that we don't need explained? We don't need to know why is this person the way they are. I mean, he just accepts her the way she is, and he just thinks it's cool. Anyway, so that was what I liked about it, is the fact that it ultimately, in the end, of course, her mother has been, I shouldn't tell you that, because I don't remember the name of the movie now, but her mother has the gift of sight. That's her skill. Her grandmother's magic is the elements. Her mother has the gift of sight, and so she's supposed to have the gift of healing, unless she actually has all three, at which point in time that would make her the fulfillment of the prophecy. So, and as it turns out, she has all three, of course. But her mother is concerned because her sight keeps showing this horrible, accident with a twisted car and twisted metal and fire and people died, people dead, including her daughter, blood and all of this. And in fact, that does happen. But this is, after fighting, not wanting to accept the idea that she is, that she has got a role to play in the world. She gets over her teenage angst when the car actually does crash. Not only is she able to save her own life, but she actually heals all the passengers. So it's very touching. It's a very touching scene, I can say that. Because in order to do healing, it has to come from a place of love. And she's not been able to do it before that. So, anyway. So that is, man, that's how you do those flowers. Anyway, this actually is working for me because I'm actually getting some done. And normally, if I'm just sitting here by myself, it's hard for me to stay focused long enough to actually finish something. So if I'm sitting here talking with the anticipation of all of you guys out there listening, it's kind of cool. I'm looking for my tangerine. Do you know where it is? There it is, right there, tangerine. So I'm gonna just use the tangerine in here. Since this was a small space, I decided not to get all blendy weird with it. Just to make it a little bit straight, straight color. So that is what I did. Now, of course, it always looks so dark when you first wet it because this paper is, it's just, just regular coloring book, it's not like expensive cardstock. It's CreateSpace paper, or I don't want to call it that anymore. We call it Amazon because CreateSpace doesn't do Amazon anymore, or actually they do, but they've changed it to KDP. They still have CreateSpace, but it's a different company, even though Amazon owns it. Okay, now this is the iris blue. Which is the lighter of the blues. Well, Lisa last night was talking about iris or blue, light blue, and she had picked her peacock out of the peacock blue out of the set. I'm like, Lisa, that is not the light blue. The light blue is the iris blue. But it wasn't my art piece. And I like to watch her live streams. I don't actually talk while I'm there. I don't participate in the chat. Mostly because, I don't know her. But there were nearly 1,000 people there last night. And that's another reason why. Because it moves too fast. There were 978 people watching. Anyway, she is, of course, she's the one that did the, has done the Derwent Inktense covers. Not all of them, but the one that had the fish and the whales and all of that was a couple of tins back. Okay, now I need to do the apple green here. Yeah, the apple green. I just like that nice bright green. So I'll do that, and then I'll actually also take some of the spring green around the bottom and around the very top. Just wait just a little bit. Hopefully that will dry with that lighter in the center. And if not, I can always add some, oh wow. Boy, that poured out of there, didn't it? I can always add some, the white stuff. I'll be right back. Okay, sorry about that. My dinner was in the oven and I went and got it out and ate it. And I'll tell you a secret, it is actually now the next day. And so I am continuing on. Excuse me. I am looking for my, you'd think I'd be able to find it, right? Unless the cat knocked it off sometime in the night, which of course is entirely possible. I am looking for the dark aquamarine. That is the iris blue. We're going to have to do this by not the process of elimination. I'm going to shut this off and be right back. Aha! I found it. So I've got the dark aquamarine. And I am going to start the way that I did the last one. This one down here. I messed these up, but that's okay. I used the green aquamarine there, and I should have used the dark aquamarine, but once again, the only person who knows is you and I. So I was talking about movies last night, and don't worry, I haven't watched any new ones, but I do have one more to add to my list of movies that I really enjoyed. And this one starts out with a young woman who, well, actually a baby, an infant, a newborn, who is in a cardboard box next to a lake. And she's just been left there, and a family of a mama and a daddy duck come along, and they sit on her and keep her warm until she is found by her own kind the following morning. And so she's found by an old man who is out for his morning swim, and so he picks up the box and lashes it to the basket of his bicycle, and heads down the road. And in the meantime, of course, it had been a stormy night, so there were tree limbs and leaves and grass and all this other kind of stuff blowing around all around the baby overnight. And as he's pedaling along the tree limbs, you have to kind of picture if you were laying down on something that was moving and looking up at the tree limbs, what that might look like to a baby. That looked like monsters and things reaching out. So, cut to the next scene. She's an adult, and of course she's got tremendous OCD, and she's afraid of any kind of flora or fauna. And she's got a job in a library, and which suits her introverted personality beautifully. And she has a dream to become a children's book writer. So, and she's a fair artist. And I guess probably what I liked about it is that she reminded me of, me. I've always sort of dreamed of writing a novel, and I've just never really had a story to tell. And so anyway, so she becomes sort of intrigued by one of the patrons who comes into the library. And she's always in trouble at the library because her OCD makes it difficult for her to get out of the house without, performing all of the routines that she needs to perform. And I completely get that. I am a lock checker. I have a tendency to check, double check, and triple check whether or not my locks are locked. So anyway, one of the young men who comes into the library is very boisterous. He's not boisterous in the traditional sense, but he's noisy, he's disorganized, he's constantly eating in the library when the rules very clearly say no food and no drink and all of this kind of stuff. So but whatever it is he's studying, it's got to do with art and mechanics, mechanical things. So he's studying a lot of Da Vinci and he's making little sketches as he goes. So he leaves the library one day and leaves a piece of paper, a pad of paper behind, or a piece of paper, on which he has sketched on whatever the piece of paper was on top of it. So she puts it in her pocket and takes it home and uses graphite to rub on it to show what the design was. And it's this beautiful mechanical bird. So now you sort of cut to the landlord has showed up at the flat that she rents, or the house that she rents. Because he's gotten a complaint about her backyard and how overgrown the house that she rented had this beautiful garden, and part of the rental agreement was that she would keep the garden in good repair, and she hasn't done it. So he tries to evict her. Oh no, actually I gotta tell you about the first part first. So she's studying this piece of paper with the mechanical bird, and all of a sudden this big wind comes up and it whips open her shutter doors and it grabs the paper out of her hand and it pins it to one of the trees outside. The wind sort of pushes it into one of the branches, and so now it's impaled on this on this little branch outside. So it's a stormy night, but she wants it back. So she goes and puts on her her outside outfit, which is a hat and overalls and welly boots and gloves and all of this. And she goes outside. She's obviously scared, but she goes anyway to retrieve this piece of paper. And when she does, she's actually hit over the head and knocked out by a falling branch. And she wakes up and she's in the neighbor's house. And a doctor is looking her over and, telling her that she doesn't have a concussion or, anything bad like that. And she looks around and there's, the old man whose house it is, and there's a younger man who's apparently the cook or housekeeper or whatever. And so they give her tea and food and ask her what the heck she was doing out there. And the old man is really crotchety. He's like one of those people that just doesn't get along with anybody. And he's especially mean to his cook. And so the cook he's domestic, but he doesn't live there. He actually goes home to his own house every night. So he has to leave to go pick his kids up from school. And but the old man wants him to do something before he goes, and so she volunteers and says that she'll do it, and that frees him up. So the next morning he shows up at her house, the cook, to cook her breakfast as a way to say thank you. And the old man comes over and he's giving her a hard time about her garden and, wants to know what the hell his cook is doing over there. And a fight ensues, at which point in time she says, well, why do you continue to work for somebody who treats you like that? And the old man tells him he's fired, and she says, fine, you're hired, and so she hires him. And but of course she doesn't have any way to pay him. But as it turns out, apparently in England, and I don't know if this is true, it's true in the story, who knows? Maybe one of you guys out there who knows can tell me, but if you're going to fire somebody, you have to give them severance, and it's got to be an amount equivalent 1 month for every number of years that you've worked there. And so in his case, he worked for the old man for 5 years, so he's entitled to 5 months' pay. So he says, well, I'll work for you, I'll cook for you, and he'll pay me. And so that's what they do. And so now comes the landlord. The landlord comes by, and he's pissed because the yard looks terrible, and so he tries to evict her then and there. But of course the cook says you have to make an appointment to be able to inspect the property, and you have to give at least 30 days notice. So the guy goes away, and so now she's got 30 days to get the yard cleaned up, only she's scared, and the cook guy can't help her because he's allergic. He's got, his allergies are terrible, and he can't go out there and do the gardening. So she once again dons this outfit. Now I laugh because I look in my backyard, and of course it's really overgrown. So I completely get, I mean, this could be my story. And it isn't that I'm scared of the flora and fauna. It's that I don't, the best time to do it is in the summertime and I can't take the heat. So anyway, so she starts to work on the yard. And she knows, of course, sorry about that. She knows, of course, nothing about gardening. And so she's just, you know, whacking stuff down with a weed whacker. And she looks up and, you know, hears her neighbor on the other side of the fence just giving her the evil eye. Only it's played by Tom Wilkinson. Excuse me, he's an English actor with a very dry manner of delivery. And so now I've got the purples. I've got thistle. I've got the, not the dusky purple. I want the mauve, kind of. What I want is the deep violet. See if I can't find that. Lagoon, deep violet. There we go. But he happens to be a master horticulturalist. So ultimately, you know, she enlists his help to teach her about gardening. And he obviously likes her, you know, likes what she's doing because he gives her a book because, you know, she obviously relates to the world through books. And so he gives her a book to read, and it really enlightens her as far as now I've got the mauve. Enlightens her as far as you know, the sort of the feeling that a really well tended garden can evoke. And so she starts, you know, she starts to do all, and she does. I mean, she is out there every night after work, and she's in her outfit, and she's, you know, she's really putting in the work. She designs a garden, and she, you know, digs a pond with koi fish, and you know, puts in all this other kind of stuff. And of course, in the meantime, she's also met and developed an interest in the mechanical bird guy. And much to the disappointment of her cook, who also kind of likes her. And the scene where the mechanical bird guy shows her his studio, or shows her his studio, where he invents these robotic things, including this mechanical bird that flies. That actually is just a wet spot. Okay, so it looks like it's a little glary on the screen, but it's just a wet spot. Is really cool. They did you know, obviously they must have built something for it, some sort of a creature, a bird creature, but it's very cool. All right, so this is the dark aquamarine, and I am going to use it. And I'm also, I went back over this and added some more color because I had been way too light in that first go round. So now I'm being a little bit more generous with the pigment. So anyway, so she, she's working on her garden, with her neighbor, and her cook is taking care of her. Oh, and of course, during the whole thing, her next door neighbor, who is helping her to his credit with the yard, is only doing so because she had to cut a deal. He kept trying to get her to give him his cook back. And the cook finally says, fine, I'll cook your meals, but I won't do it in your house. So they set up this relay point between the garden shed on his property and the garden shed on her property, and they cut a hole. And so he passes this guy his meals through this hole, which because he's so unpleasant, he's such an unpleasant person. And anyway, but it's really funny. It's got these moments of whimsy and lightness which just make you laugh, and that's that's about all you can ask for in a movie, is if they can make you laugh and make you think. That is really what it is all about. So anyway, so she come the day, of course, when she makes a date with Mechanical Bird Guy, and he stands her up. And so, after quite a long time of waiting for him at the designated location, she goes looking for him. Now, you sort of learned early in the movie that he is one of 3 children. One, when their parents died, one got the house, another got the business, and he got the art studio. And he says, and of course, I got to pick. I was the oldest, so I got to pick what I wanted. And so he picked the mechanical studio, the garage, basically. So she goes off looking for him, and she sees him walking down the street with his arms wrapped all around some other girl, and it sends her into this sort of blue funk where she doesn't want to. She doesn't want to finish the garden. She doesn't want to go to work, so she gets fired, and so she's in this horrible depression, and the old man next door and the cook are trying to figure out what they can do to kick her in the butt and get her out of it. And so she finally does go out, and they're able to get her to, because it's time is running short. She's only got a week left before before the landlord is going to come, and if he inspects the property again and the yard is still in disrepair, then she's going to get evicted, and nobody wants that because by now they all like her. And so she finishes the garden, and the night before, or 2 nights before, the landlord is due to come and inspect, there's another one of those storms, and it destroys all the hard work she's done. Because, obviously there wasn't time to get a lot of stuff to grow, so there were lots of things in containers. It was done up to look very pretty, but nothing had it. All the seeds and stuff, the seeds and the plants were still small. So they had, made it look pretty with all of the other things. And the only thing that she'd actually been able to save was a wild strawberry plant that had somehow survived her weed whacking. Like this little strawberry plant just was hiding underneath a another branch, and she missed it with her weed whacker, and little brave soldier that it was. And so that was the only thing that she had actually been able to save. She got a cover over it before the storm completely destroyed it. So she goes out the next morning, and all the hard work that she's done on the pond and all of that is all, it's filled with dirt and branches and leaves, and the fish are all dead, and it's, a bummer. And so she goes into a blue funk again, and so the old man enlists the help of the cook. He says, you're just going to have to suck it up with your allergies and help me. And so they send her off somewhere, they send her off with the doctor. That's it. They send for the doctor, and the doctor prescribes a day of, shopping and lunch, because they're both women. And so while they're out, of course, the men are fixing the garden, which was so sweet. Okay, so that was the green aquamarine. And this is, now I want the iron green. I want the iron green for these in here. Is that right? Yes. Down here. And so, it's all looking perfect. The landlord comes, he's happy, but he says, I'm going to have to raise the rent because it's so beautiful. And it's now got this, because the water feature wasn't, she didn't get authorization for it and all of this. And so in the midst of all this chaos, here comes Peter, who is the guy who stood her up. And he arrives, he's on crutches because he's been in the hospital, because the reason that he stood her up, he tells her, is because he got hit by a bus, but she saw him, with his arms around the other girl, and it's a second before he figures out that what she saw was his brother, because he's one of not 2, but 3 identical triplets. Thus, the 3 brothers, he's the eldest, and he got first pick when their parents died. And so that mystery is solved, and they're happy, and they're happy together. And so cut scene to a few months down the road. They're both sitting together, on the bed, looking at some pictures and having a talk. Phone rings, and it's bad news. The old man has passed away. Oh, and the old man had a word with the landlord, and so there was not going to be any more rent. She didn't have to pay the increased rent. She can just keep it for the same. That was all part of that chaos. And he passed away. The old man passed away. That's what the phone call was. Oh, Tom Wilkinson's character. And turns out that he was actually the owner of the property, hers and his, and so he left his house to the cook because he and his kids would need more room. The cook, by the way, is a widower. And that's why he needs, flex time so he can take care of his kids. He's got twin girls. And and he leaves her house to her. And of course, she will always take care of the yard. was just one of them, once again, a lovely feel-good film. But I love I wonder how long they had to train this baby well, the way that they filmed it, the baby was probably not in the box, but it was so funny to, see these ducks get up and waddle away, and here's this baby in the box that they've been keeping warm, keeping the baby warm until she could be found. And of course, she donates heavily to the Adopt a Duck Society. That's her charity. And that's, in fact, it was through the Adopt a Duck Society that Peter was able to get her home address. The animatronics on that bird, though, oh my goodness. They were so cool. It had to be CGI. It had to be CGI. A computer-generated image. I cannot imagine that was an actual creature. But it was so pretty. And so he tells, she actually makes up a story about Luna, which is the name of the bird, which is her first children's book. About how Luna couldn't originally fly. She was too scared, too small. She liked things low to the ground and always in good order. Until one day she said, "To heck with it, I want to fly." And so she did. I forgot the second color here. I'm going to have to add it later. There's supposed to be I was supposed to use the mallard green in here as well as this blue, but that's okay. Does anybody else do this when you're using multiple pencils and you've got them all in your hand? That movie that featured the lady with the rheumatoid arthritis, though, that one scared me a little because I have a niece that has RA, and man, I just don't like to think of her in pain anyway. Okay. Yay. All right, well, that will do for that for now. Okay, so now I need to do this one. It'll look a little different when it's completely dry. And once again, you can always add more color. It's difficult to take it away, so, if you're going to err, always try and err on the side of too light instead of too dark. Oops. Oops, there's hair. Cat dander. There's cat dander on my brush. I like this piece, I really do. It's simple colors, not very many of them, although I seem to have an endless supply of pencils in my hand. It's not really that many colors. Purples and blues, pinks and yellows, or yellows and oranges. Okay. All right, I will do the same thing with the rest of this. I think I will go ahead and sort of end the video here, only because I suspect that we are running on an hour and a half of time. So I am going to just finish this just exactly like this, these exactly like those, and then I might add some glitter gel pen in a few places. I was thinking that one of the things I might do is, let's see if I can grab this is a graphic, so this has got the bigger point. I was just thinking of doing these black. Couple of them and find out what it looks like. 2, 3. Oh, I did have some sad news last night. I had a couple of, actually I think last year right around this time, I had looked up a friend of mine that I knew from long time ago, back when I lived in Palm Springs, and he died. It's like, wow, 60 years old, and he passed away. Drank himself to death. I was shocked. His sister had made a post on his, she didn't say that, but he died of an infected liver, so that's cirrhosis. And anyway, yeah, it was sad. But it's just, it reminds me how precious time is to all of us, and how important it is to look after our health and our well-being and all of that. I am really liking the way that this is turning out. I like the overall. I have to see if I can do something with that when it's done. I'll scan it and I don't know, make something out of it. A scarf or a piece of fabric or a card, or I think it would be a pretty scarf design. Pretty on a scarf. Okay. All right. I was going to go, wasn't I? For those of you that did join me for this work in progress video, I do hope that you enjoyed what you saw. If you did, if you didn't, if you have a comment, I'm always happy to hear from you. Please do leave comments below, kindly worded if possible. And until we meet again, please do color something pretty. I'll see you on Sunday at 2 for the live show.